Hi everyone, welcome back to my podcast series, Other Realms of Reality. And this is part 5, Entity Attachments. The particular experience I'm going to share today, and I've had many of these over the years, I think it's particularly important to talk about this subject because people are walking around, they're not even aware of what an entity attachment is or how easy it is to get one. And this is not to spread fear, but more awareness. Because we do have power over anything that comes in our space or field. So it's important to know so that you can actually do something about it. And there are tools that you can use. I will share one with you later. But I also share tools in part 1 and the other parts of this series, but also part 4 is very helpful. So before I give you an example of one of my own experiences, I think it's important to talk about what an entity attachment really is for those that may not know fully or understand it fully. So an entity attachment is usually described as being a low vibrational, energetic being or spirit or phenomena that attaches to a person and feeds on their energy source. And the frequency of these beings vary quite considerably in the lower vibrational spectrum, from just your average lower vibrational discarnate soul to something quite dark and more detached from source. If you haven't checked out part 4, please do of this series because it does talk more about frequencies and the various spectrums of that and why it's important to raise your frequency. So you're probably wondering how these entities actually attach in the first place. Well, they are very much drawn to people that are in a lower vibrational state. And this can be because of many reasons. It could be because the person is in fear, experiencing trauma, is angry, is in a toxic relationship, is experiencing depression, substance abuse, or even somebody with a heavy addiction. It could even be somebody that's experiencing chronic health problems, which is lowering their vibrational state. Any mental state really where you are in a lower vibrational frequency. I also just want to add that I also feel there are agreements and contracts that we make prior to coming into this incarnation where we are here to complete or experience something with another entity or being. And this could be another reason. Now, as I've said earlier, I've had many of these experiences over the years, and initially I wasn't even aware of them. It's only through some of my own personal experiences with the psychic phenomena, a keen interest for learning over the years, but mainly through discernment. Because how are you going to know that they're even there unless you have that discernment on some level? But don't worry, you can still go through the process of clearing, even if you're not fully aware. And I will share a tool at the end of this recording for those that may want to try this themselves. But there are many different ones out there. So how do we know they're there? That's a very good question, particularly if you're struggling with the discernment. But with discernment, that comes over time, from my experience, and it's something that you're constantly developing. But you can actually look out for some signs. One of the main ones is a drop in your mood. Now, if you're someone that's going through a particularly difficult phase in your life and your mood drops frequently because of that, then it's likely to be just what you're going through in that moment. It's not necessarily an attachment. But if it's something that feels maybe a little bit heavier than normal and a bit more challenging, then it's possible that could be a sign. You could be having darker thoughts that are uncomfortable, like they're not your own. You could be feeling unexplained fatigue or a pull to constant toxic behaviour, which absolutely can attribute to some mental health problems out there. Another really good sign is your animals or pets. Are they suddenly acting strangely around you? Are they staring at something next to you? Are they hissing or growling or very reluctant to come near you? Or just a bit wary? These could be all signs that there is a potential of an entity attachment. Even children have that ability to connect with the spiritual realm and see and sense things around them, particularly younger children, because they haven't yet been fully conditioned by society, which is what happens to a lot of us as we grow older. And we lose that ability to sense and feel things. So having children and animals around you and they're able to see something that maybe you're not is very, very helpful. So as you can imagine, having an entity attachment can impact your mood, your well-being, your mental health, the way that you think. And yes, it does have some influence over your thoughts and what you do to some degree, depending on the strength of the entity and the circumstances on how much it's influencing you. So that's a brief overview of an entity attachment. And I'm now going to just talk about one of my own personal experiences so that you get an idea of how this can occur. A few years ago now, I went out as part of a group. There were a few people I knew and some that I didn't. One of the people in the group in particular I found a little bit harder to connect with. I sensed this real kind of pushback from them. So I initially just put it down to some people you gel more with than others and left it at that. And at the end, when we said our goodbyes, there was this real strong feeling of this person did not want to engage with me in any particular form. And it certainly felt very uncomfortable for me. So I was more than happy to get back in the car and head back home afterwards. But on the way home in my car, very quickly, I started to feel my mood shift. And there was this heaviness that came over me, a feeling that I couldn't shake very easily, a real negative, heavy feeling that I just didn't like. Now, just to give you a bit more background to why I feel I actually attracted this particular entity in, I was going through my own debilitating health problem at that time, and I was very much in people-pleasing mode. So I was very conscious about how other people felt more than myself, and I was always putting other people before myself. And so I guess there was some level of fear of being myself around other people, and that then lowered my frequency and vibration so that I was in more of a vulnerable place. So I just want to paint that picture because, as you can imagine, there are a lot of people out there suffering from debilitating conditions and depression, which often goes with those conditions, particularly if they're experiencing pain or they're not able to function properly, or even somebody that just has low self-esteem and lack of self-worth. But it doesn't mean that just because you have a moment of where your energy frequency drops that you are susceptible to picking up an entity attachment. From my experience, it tends to be a kind of consistent pattern. So if you're going into a bit of a spiral of your frequency going down and you're kind of stuck there for a little while, then it's possible that you can absolutely draw something in. But if it's just a fluctuation through the day, which we all have good and bad moments as our frequency raises, where we're feeling more joy or where we're feeling not so good. But when it's consistent and it's longer ongoing patterns, then that, in my experience, feels more when you're likely to possibly attract something in. So continuing on with my experience, I literally got home and sat in the chair and I felt very, very fatigued. And my cat came in and just stared at me and looked very wary. She wasn't hissing, but she was very unsure, and when I went close to her, she backed away. Looking at her reaction, I immediately knew what it was. Because I'd had quite a few experiences in the past, I was able to see some of the signs at this stage. In that moment, I used my tools of clearing to clear whatever it was that came in. I also took a salt bath, which helped me to kind of relax more and focus on what I was doing, because Normally with a clearing, you can kind of just say a statement and it clears fairly quickly. But this particular entity was not going quite quickly. It was what I felt was of a darker energy. And because of my own lower vibrational state in that moment, it was harder for me to shift out of that and do the clearing. So I'm going to come back to part 4 if you haven't checked that out, because I do explain about frequencies and how a really, really good way of raising your frequency is to connect with your heart. And this is what I use nowadays. This is what I try to do more often. And because of that, I am less likely to be in those places for very long, even if I have chronic health problems, which I'm still sort of working through at the moment. So I just want to explain that because it's really vital in order to really shift something, certainly of a darker nature, then you really need to shift your frequency. And I think that is probably one of the best tools you can do. So please check out part 4 if you want to understand a bit more about that. You can also get help through a professional shamanic practitioner, somebody that specializes in cutting cords and attachments, or even a good psychic medium that is able to do that themselves. Not all mediums kind of do that, but some do. Some specialize in those areas. Again, use discernment with anyone that you get help from. So once you clear the attachment, what will happen is your energy should shift and you should feel lighter and the heavy symptoms disappear. So going back to my own experience, I actually came across this person again a few months later at another social gathering. They were completely different towards me. I was almost shocked in that moment because they were so friendly, so completely opposite to how they were the first time I met them. And in that moment, I realised that the entity attachment had come from them. I had my suspicions before, but it was really the culmination for me when I saw the complete change in behaviour that did actually occur. Now, this person was somebody that opened themselves up to the spirit world quite regularly with their work. And like I've mentioned in previous videos in this series, that when you do that and you're not raising your frequency, you can attract things in. It was like on some subconscious level, this person knew what had occurred and was very, very grateful. Or you could argue maybe it was part of an agreement we had before we come in to make this exchange. So I'm just going to share with you now one of the tools for clearing. This you can do yourself wherever you are really, and it's a very helpful tool to have, either stating out loud or just in your thoughts, because your thoughts are heard by spirit, so it doesn't matter if you say it out loud or internally, though some people say saying it out loud has more power, but that is really optional for you really, and it's the intention at the end of the day. But I would say something along the lines of, I am a sovereign being and I cut all cords, all attachments, all negative contracts and agreements. I remove all lower vibrational frequencies, energies, entities and beings from my energy fields and physical body, and anything that may be feeding off my energy and lowering my vibrational frequency state. I ask my higher self to step in and help clear my space and lift my frequency. Now you can tweak the words to this in any which way you wish, but what I also recommend highly is that you try to lift your vibrational frequency through feeling. So if it means looking at something that makes you laugh, something that brings you joy, a memory, somebody that you love, just sense and feel into that. That is going to be the quickest way to lift you out of that state. Because remember, nothing lower vibrational can affect the higher vibrational frequencies. Well, I hope this has been helpful to someone out there, and I am going to share another experience very shortly. So I will see you soon for another video. Take care, everyone.